very well. Hello, welcome to Ascend the Matrix, the podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brittany Renee, a psychic intuitive embodiment coach, healer, grid worker, code worker, all of the fun things, alongside my handsome co-host, Chrys.
Hello, everyone. It's Chris King. I'm a medicine alchemist, shamanic healer, spiritual business coach, ascended astrologer, microdosing expert, psychedelic integration specialist. Okay. I am a light worker, and I am so excited to bring other light workers into the space for you all. Thank you, Brittany, for joining me today. And thank you so much, Ford, for being here. Ford is an incredible guest who I've had the pleasure of being on your podcast and working with you and spending time with you and talking about the nature of the universe. So I'm so excited to have you here. Ford is an American award-winning music producer, songwriter, and visionary. For more than 30 years, Ford has created music for some of the most famous recording artists in the world, everyone from Michael Jackson to Ludacris and Sierra, which was one of my absolute favorites. And, when I met Ford, and Ford was like, "Oh, yeah, I produced that song." And I was like, "That was one of my favorite songs of all time." So sorry if I'm having a fangirl moment right here. Um, Ford has earned RIAA production credits on more than 35 million albums sold worldwide and nearly 1 billion YouTube streams. And that comes from the Phi Tribe. Yeah, including your Phi Tribe
Yeah, yeah.
mission, I'm going to call it. Aside from a stellar career in the music industry, Ford is also an author of 2 books on consciousness and existential philosophy. Through extensive research, he has applied this esoteric wisdom of sacred geometry, frequency, and vibration to create an entirely new way to think about music. And Phi Tribe is the culmination of this vision, now with 300,000 subscribers and over 70 million views. Thank you so much for being here, Ford. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me, Chris and Renee. I mean, Brittany, I'm sorry.
Brittany Renee, it's all good.
I was like, you got it right.
Yes, listen, I have to correct you on the Sierra. I produced the remix for it, the dance remix for it, though. So I don't want to take
Oh,
any.
I
I
got
don't
you.
want to
I
take any
got
credit away from the producers
you. Yes,
involved.
give credit where credit's due.
Of course, yeah.
But when I looked at your wall when I came into your studio one time, I was like, I have that CD, I have that CD, I have that CD, I have that CD. So it was really cool to be with someone who had been so, quote unquote, successful from a 3D perspective or from a matrix perspective, and you were, and contributed so much fun music, things that I resonated with, and then to see you moving in such a similar direction that I was, that both of us were orienting toward ascension and getting people to wake up and tapping out of the matrix and actually healing the body. I was like, whoa, this is a perfect example of the great awakening that we're in, is that you have these incredible music producers who were always contracted to do something spiritual, but finally have made their way there. And it was beautiful to watch to be in the one of the later chapters in your evolution when it came to finding your way into your purpose. It was really cool.
And so I was really great. I met you at the perfect time. It's just such a transformative time in my life,
Yeah,
which was, so reflective in of our meeting each other, for
yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
So take us back a little bit to your early life. Tell us about you before we go into all of the different things that you've been through and that you have created and given the world. I want to give people an idea of how you got here, what your childhood was like, because we have a lot of star seeds that are listening, people who don't feel like they're from this planet or that they're here with a much bigger mission than to just be human. And so, how did that show up for you?
Uh, just as weirdly as it does for most people who have that light in them, we have that shine in them. And I think it makes life very, very difficult for you, especially when you're young. I know when I was, not to get super heavy in early into this, but like
We love that.
I
We
got,
love
I was
those.
molested when I was a younger kid for years on end. And with that, just I've kind of disassociated with the world, in many, many ways. And there just weren't ways to deal with stuff like that back then. It was just
Right.
we just don't talk about that, So it was different. And so that probably shaped the way that I was as a kid, which made me very, very withdrawn. I had a few friends, but I was really like a ghost, in school. I was the one that like you knew their face, but you don't know their name or anything about them, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So that was kind of like me growing up. And as a result of that, um, it made me dive into music because that was like my escape from the world. Music was that. So the happy part is it made me really good at music, So that's the beautiful thing that I could take from that.
Yeah.
And also as a kid, I was also dealing with gender dysphoria on a really, really heavy, it's heavy for anybody dealing with it. But I grew up in the 70s. So there wasn't programs for this back then. There wasn't anything like that. So between being molested and being trans, back then was just like I felt like I was getting just punched left and right, and
Yeah.
definitely suicidal most of my teenage years. Just terribly, terribly just done with life. Like if this is what life is, then you can keep it, kind of a vibe.
Yeah, it seems to be a theme for many of us. Starseeds, light workers, people on a mission, people here with, I heard one time the greater the mission, the, harder the journey or the darker the experience can be. And that really helped me because of how dark life has been many times. And my
Yeah,
ego would say, who am I to be a healer and a spiritual guru or anyone who has an opinion on anything with all this darkness in me and all these dark things I've been through and these places that my journey has taken me? And you realize that that's the code that makes you the most incredible shaman or healer or mystic, is that ability to dance with the dark like that. But
yeah.
I mean, as a young person, you came in with all the things you were, I mean, it's like disruptor, check,
Oh,
check,
yeah,
check,
totally.
just coming in to disrupt so many different programs as we meant to do. But it feels like jumping in front of, like when we're healing ancestral trauma, jumping in front of a train that's moving hundreds of miles per hour. It's like we stopped the train, but we got clobbered in the process. And so many of us have found our way toward that suicide realm and or ideation. I mean, even as kids, which is insane to think
Yeah,
about.
right. As a kid to be that way. Yeah, yeah. The
I
fantasy of
think
escape, even then,
we
What's,
find these escapes too, and it's interesting because just hearing you say that, and I know Chris and I have talked about this. My escape was always theater. It was like the dancing musical theater realm, and it was being this other person who people loved on stage, right? And it was like,
yeah.
oh, you love me here, right? And so it was this almost yearning for that space. I'm curious to know, what was it for you that got you into music, or like who was the artist that it was like, oh my gosh, I want this. I want to know where the root of this love for music is with you.
The the love for music, my dad played guitar, so I kind of grew up in a very musical family kind of a thing. But I think dealing with all the dysphoria that I was dealing with as a kid, when I saw David Bowie, I'm like,
I
here's a
knew you
man
were
who
going
could
to
be,
say that.
yeah, he could be a man, he could be a woman, he could be an alien, he could be anything he want. I was like, that's where if I did music, I could get away with it. That was the thinking. I can get away with being a freak, and that was going to be okay. So I
I
think that
felt the
was the
same
initial
way
draw.
toward I felt the
Huh?
same way with Prince. Like I had
Okay,
a very
yeah, I
similar
could see that.
experience with, like, if he can dress like that, I can too. But it's
Sure.
hiding behind that artist formerly known as Prince persona. That's kind of, I felt safe behind that as well. Like
Yeah.
I can be a woman and a man and all these different things and look the way I
Yeah.
want to look through that because it's cool. Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
same experience.
Totally. Yeah, it just that was the drive for sure to get into it, like that was it for me. Or it was
I
him.
love that.
And I just did music through high school and found ways to make money doing music, and was really an atrocious musician when I was a kid. But in my 20s, I just got good at it. In college, I just retreated so much into it, and I got good at hustling my songs. And back then, it was just the music business was very, very, very different. And I
Oh,
would sell cover songs to people playing in bars, so they didn't have to program their songs. And so that all of that work at covering other people's songs got me really good at like knowing what sounds good and what doesn't sound good, and what was easy to make and what wasn't easy to make. And from there, I just got lucky and caught the attention of a few people, and ended up getting a job at a record company where I could do music full time. And I got paid peanuts, barely enough to live. And can I afford bologna this week, or go I
oh
go to the
yeah.
movies on Saturday? But I was working in the music business, which was incredible, in my 20s to be doing that.
And were you
And
out in California? Were you?
pardon me?
Did you move to California? Were you in LA, New
I
York?
was in Miami.
Oh, I see.
Miami. Yeah. Very similar kind of place though.
Yeah. Very.
And yeah, things were good. It was aside from starving to death and trying to make it, I had like the dream gig and I was doing my dream job, and so life was good, and I had the freedom to flirt with my gender quite a lot,
Yeah,
during
I was
that
going to ask
time.
that, like how the gender was showing up for you, in the teens, it's one thing, but when you get in your 20s and you're finding yourself and you're starting to become who you are, I think it's really important that we talk a little bit about your journey with
Yeah,
gender, especially as you're getting older and tapping more into music and moving more towards your purpose, because there's not enough spiritual folk, let's just say, and starseeds, light workers, mystics who are talking about gender and navigating it because it's just not the majority.
sure.
So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
more about that.
During that time, I was definitely flirting with it a lot. I had the good fortune of meeting a young woman who was very, very supportive of that vibe and loved the fact that her boyfriend was very gender bendy, So, yeah, we were together for most of my 20s, a good solid 8 years. She actually became a pretty famous singer, so I don't want to mention her name, but we did a record later on, and she had a huge number one hit. But
You would have to say that for you. I'm like going to my pendulum. Which one is it? Oh,
it wouldn't be right to say. But yeah, so we had a nice relationship for a very long, long time, and I love being accepted, and I felt like I was seen for the first time, kind of vibe.
yeah.
And then I think from that place of acceptance and feeling loved and feeling adventurous and free, from that place, I started to have real success in music because I think it came from the energy of that freedom. And I should say that during this time, I was not spiritual at all. I was a bona fide atheist. I was an intellectual atheist. So my favorite thing to do would be to argue with people about religion and spirituality because I knew I could crush them. And it was a terrible egoic thing, but I definitely that was the majority of my 20s. So that's the cynical place that I'm coming from, and I've come complete, 180,
Yeah, your
360, I
flavor
should say, almost really.
of gender and spirituality and the nature of the universe and your belief systems are different than most people, because you say the word cynical, but there is sort of there's something positive about it for me whenever we talk. It does sometimes can be very scientific or uh, a little bit more left brain than the people who just believe anything. Oh, the Arcturian princess told me to tell you, you and I are a little different. Went into
Yeah.
the atheist realm in my late teens. It was big and it caused me a lot of anxiety, atheism, even though it just made so much sense, I thought at the time. Spirit did not let that happen for too many years, but it
Yeah.
was I don't know how I would have gotten to where I've gotten right now. It's like total embodiment to go from really believing atheism so much that you're anxious at night knowing that you're not going to exist at some point.
What was the thing that was like that made you question atheism for the like what was there was had to been a moment that you went,
Okay, so the entire time it didn't feel totally right. The anxiety was bad, but it was so I don't know if we've ever talked about this, Ford, but there's a phenomenon known as sliders or sliding, which stands for street light interference. And these are people who claim that they can make street lights go out. I didn't know this was a thing. So when I
oh,
was
news
17,
to me.
18 years old, street lights started going out when I would look at them or right as I was about to drive under them every single day. And it still happens, just not as much as it used to. And it went on for years. And back then, when I was atheist, I thought maybe it was a police radar because I got so many speeding tickets back then. My brain was jumping to those things. But it was happening so much, and I was a huge fan of Long Island Medium. I was an atheist who was watching a Long Island Medium, okay, because I wanted it so bad. I
Yeah, I get
wanted
it.
it
Yeah.
so bad, but I also had to honor that I didn't feel it the way it was given to me for many years, and I had to find it on my own. But there's no better way of finding something on your own than to start completely from scratch, which
100%
atheism
agree. Yeah.
totally was. It was like the firm basis of I tried to not believe in anything. And that
Yeah.
cleared me so deep that what really was true for me was allowed to come in. And we needed that reset. But once those lights started going out, I finally asked one day as I was driving, one of them went out, and I said, okay, if there is something trying to communicate with me or something wanting to connect, I need you to make another light go out. And it did as soon as I said that. And so I said,
Wow.
if you make it go out a third time, I swear on everything I will not be atheist. I had this conversation out loud. I was 18 and it happened again. And I was like, that's it. I understand something's happening here. I'm not saying it's a ghost. I could be my higher self on a spaceship somewhere. I even thought that back then. Okay. Like sending signals into the video game. I thought all of those things, but I knew this is more special, and the I'm just going to turn to dirt thing doesn't have to be my reality, and it doesn't have to be the truth. So yeah, there definitely was that moment, but I needed to go through that,
Yeah.
you know? So our
Totally.
journeys are very similar in like just being in a relationship with someone was complicated because
Yeah.
like I'm attracted to you, but I want you to be attracted to me, but also I want you to be attracted to the woman in me too, and that's weird, and I don't know how to explain that to you just yet. And it's just
I get it.
right. And it's
It's,
like you want to be seen for all of it. And then
yeah.
there's this like, well, because life has been so hard, there can't possibly be a loving God. There can't possibly be an order to all of this because of how just horrible it is. And then once you start to feel the joy in life and you start to feels like to me, once you started to feel that love come in and another aspect of source in the form of a soulmate who is now a famous singer was able to see and broadcast a adoring on you and a loving on you, which Aries loves. And that I think opened you up for the first time. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you may not have ever felt a love quite like that or a connection quite like
For
that.
sure. For sure. And honesty like that, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
because everything's about hiding, up to that point, there's this fear involved. And I still don't think that I got the lesson, and we'll get into that later, but I had to learn that lesson again the second way, I, you know, I had the freedom with her to be myself kind of thing. And then we had to hit a record. And suddenly we're touring together and we're going off all these different cities. And I started experiencing the the people questioning and being rude and all that. And this is in
This is
the
in the 90s or early
late 90s,
2000s.
99, 2000,
Oh, God. Yeah.
so trans is like not on anybody's,
Right.
radar.
Right.
And I had a more than once, really unpleasant experiences where I would, be on stage 1 minute in front of thousands of people, and then I go back, and then someone would just rip me to shreds over being trans, just make me cry and everything else. So I was really like torn. Like, do I do my dream, or do I become do I stay my honest self? And I failed the test, Chris. I failed
How?
it. I failed it because I just said, I've worked so hard to make myself in the place I am now with music that I didn't want to screw that up over me expressing myself. To me, that wasn't as important as what I was doing in music, which is so
Yeah.
ridiculous.
But at the time, I would have done the same thing if you're in your 20s. You haven't even gone through your Saturn return. Like there's a certain um, maturity that we haven't even reached around how we're going to feel about all this at 80. We're thinking in the moment
Yeah.
at 27 years old, like I can go dress how I want to dress later. Let's master this and get everything I can get out of this. Let's also make millions of dollars and then we can go live out in the woods or in a castle and be ourselves. That can work that way too. Like Brittany and I, when we've done our coaching sessions together and she's, been mentoring me about authenticity and stuff, that's been a huge thing, Brittany, is that I've been afraid to be myself because people won't book. People won't think that I'm spiritual enough. They won't think that, oh, he doesn't meditate every day and he jerks off, so he can't possibly be a shaman. Okay? There's there's all kinds of egoic blockages that we can get into in in that process, and I may have felt the same way too, especially when you're living a life that is pretty extraordinary. You might do anything to keep it, including not being yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel this is something that many many light workers move
Brittany,
through.
you can speak to this
Yeah.
specifically because of the relationship you were in.
I can. So I was in deep manifestation of very specific things. And pretty much like overnight fell into this relationship that, I mean, checked like 99.9% of the boxes of things that I was like, I need and want these things. And it was just like overnight in this lifestyle that was private planes, designer bags, a black card, whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Um, which was obviously exciting, right? Because it was like, oh, like there was the part of me being like, I manifested this. Like this was all because I put in the work, I did the embodiment, I was in my authenticity. And I wanted to say to you too, here's the coach in me a little bit, but friend saying, I don't think we ever fail the test. I think that we are given multiple layers to embody deeper what our truth is. And we are never failing when we like misstep in our mind. Like that's all a program anyways, right? But I found myself in this relationship that little by little was getting kind of chipped away to be someone that I really wasn't. And
Mhm.
I cared about this person so deeply and was like, I can see a life with you. We were talking about a future. We were buying a house, like all of the things. And at the same time, as I was building this like dream reality, I was finding myself in more breakdowns than I had been in years. And it was because I was at this battle with myself of like, do I stay and bend these little, seemingly little at the time, right? Little here, little there, like little bends to keep this shiny future that I've been manifesting? Or do I leave and like basically,
Oh, is she frozen for you?
She's frozen.
and you're like, it
She's
never really
oh oh,
felt,
you were just frozen for a second.
oh,
It was
yours was
cute. You
freezing
were cute.
earlier.
But if you could
Okay.
repeat the last 7 seconds.
I don't even know where I stopped, where our 7 second was. Um, I was saying, being this internal battle of just like, do I keep this shiny future that I've been working towards with this person that I genuinely really love, or do I walk away and start over again? And it was just this like internal fight. And it never fully, in that experience for me, I never could fully breathe. Like I could never fully just like relax. There was always something that was like, don't get too comfortable, like don't get too comfortable. And I pushed past it because I was like, I love this person. We're making future plans. We're gonna figure this out. Like I've worked so hard for this. And there came a point where it was like boundaries were being crossed and all these things were happening that spirit was very much like, let's get it together here. Like this really isn't the highest version of this. And I had this moment that I did a like whole brand rebrand for my company, and one of my girlfriends was with me and I was driving his Porsche, and she looked at me and she goes, I just had this moment looking at you driving this car and thought, oh wait, this isn't her car, this is his car. And she's like, you're totally going to make money enough to like have this life on your own, and that's really cool that you got this like kind of moment to experience this beforehand. And as she said that, I heard like, are you hearing it? Like, are you listening? Like, you're going to do this by yourself. And from that point, it was just like little by little, it was just one more thing and one more thing. And I laid a boundary and was like, if we have another upset where you're basically not in a space that feels aligned, you're not on a team with me, like I have to walk. And of course, that time arrived very quickly. And Spirit was like, it's this or it's your mission. So make your choice.
But also, it's millions and millions and millions of dollars, or it's your mission, they say. And we can have both, but to your human, I think spirit sometimes, and when I say spirit, I also mean our higher self, okay? I don't mean the
Yes.
angels, I mean our higher self that's directing all of this.
Mhm.
Um, the higher self, the inner being, the universe at large, all three of us, my parents called me Hollywood most of my childhood. I was an actor. So the three of us are part of this. David Bowie, Prince, Whitney, we're inviting all of you into the space right now. Michael, like the music and the theater and the performance and the Hollywood of it all here in this group that we're in right now, um, it feels like we all were faced with this. Do we choose the Matrix because actually we have what it takes and we're talented enough and weird and cool enough? But also, do we choose that or do we choose our soul mission, not knowing if the soul mission will end up with castles and support and millions of dollars? What if it's a dog and a tent out in the middle of the woods of Mount Shasta? You know, do I want
Yeah.
that? We're going to have it all, but Spirit needed us to know that we were willing to
Yeah.
sleep in a tent, to dress how we wanted to dress authentically, that we were willing to choose uncertainty and authenticity over this certain lifestyle, which was just an over exaggerated Matrix movie that is an option to us, but doesn't actually get us out of the Matrix or tap us into singularity or oneness or any of that. And Ford, you were very much involved in Hollywood and the music industry, and I know it's different now, but as you know, all the things that are coming out now as we're having this conversation. See, 2 years ago when we were
Hmm.
connected, there was none of this Diddy stuff going on. And I mean, it was all being talked about, but very underground. Now it's everywhere. So, what was your experience back in the 90s and early 2000s with Hollywood?
Yeah.
You do not have to
Oh,
tell me if the Illuminati ever recruited you.
no, I mean, here, listen. I've
I want to know.
I've been to a lot of parties. I've never been to a Diddy party. I did produce two songs with Diddy, but never got invited to one of his parties, thankfully.
Thankfully.
And and I will say that out of all the parties I've ever been to, like I've never seen like vials of adrenochrome or anything like that going
Right.
around. It's not like, I've heard of rumors of parties getting crazy, but evidently I wasn't cool enough to be invited to those those really
Well,
creepy
I think
parties,
there's a
you know?
bloodline thing. I think, Brittany and I have talked about it. There's
Yeah.
tons of celebrities. Not all of them are clones or reptilians. Why not? Why are some of them walking around being like, not everyone here is human? Like,
I
why
think they
are
know
you?
each other. They smell each other or something. They know each
Yes.
other. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
there's
something
something
there.
like we can't be all of us. It has to be us infiltrating something.
Yeah.
There's very specific ways that they work. So, um, I know that the music industry is really crumbling right now. And
Well, yeah, I mean it's bad now, but like even here's the thing, like here's your inspiration that you're asking for, which is, I gave up who I was to pursue the music career, and that one single blossomed into working with, famous person after famous person after famous person after it just got to be ridiculous. And, I had the $1 million house and the $100,000 sports car and the Rolexes and all the crazy stuff that you can dream of. And every single day when I put my feet on the floor, I wanted to die.
Mm.
mm,
Yeah. So none of that made a difference.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
hanging a gold record and I'd still want to die. You know, it
And
was
so, what was
pointless.
plaguing you at that time the most? Where was the I want to die coming from?
It was just feeling like prisoner to myself. You know, I had gotten I married a different woman, and lived this very normal lifestyle, and tried to fit in society as a normal man and did my thing, but
Yeah.
like I just felt prisoner to myself. I couldn't explain it. And I even through that point, is where all of the awakening took place during this 12-year marriage. Just because I was working on myself and it was so miserable that I had to work on myself. It's either work on myself or die,
Or die. That's right.
is, either that or, and then once psychedelics came into the picture, it was like, oh, oh, and I didn't have responsibility. So I had the freedom to just trip all the time and trip see how deep I can go. Let me see what
Yeah.
would happen if I took 12 hits, what happens when
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind of thing, and
And
I
what
have
are
my
some of
notebook.
the psychedelics that you were working with?
My favorite was 2CI. That's my favorite.
Hmm.
I'm also a proponent of Lucy, as long as it's quality, you know. But
Is
my favorite
TCI
is
similar to
2CI.
2CB?
No, it's very different. It's a synthetic version of peyote is what it
Yeah,
is.
got it. Got
You
it.
know, so it's basically peyote without all the puking and,
Yes, yes.
pooping and all that stuff,
Got it. Yeah.
Incredibly DMT-like, but
Yeah.
about 5.5 hours long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
2CB is similar to Wachuma, which is peyote's cousin. So
Okay.
they're probably similar. I would say 2CI is a little bit more intense.
2CB is a little bit more in the body. It feels
Yeah.
more like ecstasy, a little bit
Yep.
more like it's in the
That's
body. And then
right. That's
2CI
right.
is, and if you think about the
Much.
names, which is crazy, like the name comes from the chemical component, which is the number two, capital C dash I, and it's some long scientific name. But think about what it does. It helps me to see I,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence. That's
Yeah.
because we live in a dream. You
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. And
You know?
you're attuned because of the music you make and all the psychedelics you've done, which people in the Matrix may say you're frying your brain, but this was you exploring your consciousness. Your intention behind it is what carried you into the realms of healing versus just tripping for no reason. I use the word
Yeah.
journeying versus tripping, but when you use tripping, you mean journeying, even though other people
Journeying.
don't.
Yeah. I don't do it
I
in
know
front of
you mean
people.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. It's all
just the
about the exploration for me, and to dive in deeply into myself and commune with something grander than myself. That is
yeah.
me. That is me on a much um, simpler level.
Yeah. So, in your psychedelic journeys, what are some of the most impactful things that you encountered? Because you did most of this on
Yeah.
your own.
Yeah, fortunately, my wife was at the time was very cool about it, and she also partake, but she mostly liked babysitting me and allowing me to
Good.
just go
Yeah. I
go
mean,
deep, you know.
yeah. Yeah.
But ego death, definitely. I didn't know it was ego death when it was happening to me, but I found out later that it was called ego death. But I accidentally took over 100 hits. I didn't mean to do that. It was I
I've
took
had the
something that
same
was
things happen.
uncut.
We're like, I didn't mean to take 9 grams of mushrooms. And people say, what do you mean you didn't mean to take 9 grams of mushrooms? And I'm like, look, sometimes spirit, and that was what changed my life. I had a spiritual awakening 6 months after that. Okay. Kundalini awakening
Yeah,
for
I
that.
believe it. I believe
And
it.
and it was horrifying during, just
Yeah,
as your experience was.
the worst
First,
experience
I
of my
was
life
and it was one of the worst
by 1,000.
experiences of my life
Yeah.
because I didn't know who I was, and I was the wall, I was the fan, I was the weather, and that felt scary to my ego. That felt wrong, even though it was so right. I was too um my human was still online enough to go, you're not you anymore,
Yeah.
instead of just becoming one.
Sure. Like I feel like what we call ego death is the place that I bask in most of the time now, which is very much like I don't perceive life in linear time anymore. That is gone for me.
Yeah.
If it's there for practicality's sake, if we had to
Right.
schedule this podcast, but
Right.
aside from that, there's just the sun going up and the sun going
Right.
down.
Right.
And it's just what's happening, and I have no control over it. It's just what's happening. Things come in, a little drama happens, it gets a little scary for a second, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
But I'm just in tune with what's happening, and it's just with no
Your
feeling for
story
it.
of your psychedelic journey when you had your ego death always stuck with me, especially the way you felt about it.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it before, and I shared what I felt about it, even though it was your experience, and I honor that because you were like, it sounded very similar to something David Icke said one time about ayahuasca, where a grandmother took him to this insanely vast, empty darkness that he was scared of. Okay, it was
Yeah.
scary. And ayahuasca said, "This is really who you are. This is where you're from." And he took it as nothingness.
Yeah.
And she was like, "No, it's that you're not getting that this emptiness isn't nothing." Okay, like your human isn't quite getting that. And she called it the dazzling darkness. So he calls it the dazzling darkness. And I, in astrology, call it the 13th house. And the 13th, because beyond Pisces in that 13th house is the center point of the chart, or the nucleus, which I call the infinite void, or the great womb of source herself, or the goddess. Infinite potential, dark matter, empty space, everything that's in your nuclei. It's like you're made of trillions of black holes. Well, inside of those black holes is this dazzling darkness. And when you go there as a human who is so used to physical reality and uh, ego identification, that is beyond frightening. And I've
Yeah.
been close to there. I wouldn't, the way you described it, I don't think I quite got all the way there, but it,
It's either way. It does. You're getting the gist of it.
I got the gist of it.
Yeah,
I
like
didn't,
the journey to the blackness from your perception is 1,000 years, you know? So when you arrive, when there's not even you to arrive, there's just blackness arrives, you
right,
know? And and there's a part of you left that just knows there's no hope that you'll ever find that life ever again. Like
right,
it's so far away that it's gone. It's death. It's
right,
death,
right,
you know. And didn't realize that I was going to get to go back to that life, but it was just it's just hopeless. It just feels like, oh God, this is what death is. It's just empty and nothing. And it wasn't until later I learned that, there's this philosopher, Ken Wheeler, who says this so poetically. He says that the emptiness is not empty.
right.
If light is infinity, then the emptiness is the negative image of infinity,
That's right. Yes.
right? So it's infinite potential. So like what I was experiencing as the blackness is the empty stage of imagination. And it can be anything I want it to be
That's
and
right.
as detailed as I wish to make it.
And that's why when I tell people, they say there's a 13th sign, and I say, yes, there is a 13th constellation there, but I'm talking about the 13th sign, which is your soul's blueprint and energy signature, not these 12 other archetypes. It's so unique, it goes beyond those archetypes. And the 13th house being that infinite potential space, I tell people, don't go to Pisces to manifest something because that's just returning to spirit. The 13th energy is just beingness. It was kind of like what was going on before the Big Bang, if there's a before, you
The
know?
beingness,
It's
sure. Think about
just
it. Christ had 12 apostles. This makes him the 13th,
that's
right?
right.
Which is empty. Even the story of Jesus is told outside of time. The 33 years of his life,
Right.
right? Before that, you have BC, and after that, you have AD.
Right.
His
Right.
life exists outside of time,
Mm, right.
right?
Yeah, yeah. 33 is a very,
Yeah.
I'm 33 now. This was my 33rd year, and I always thought it was like, this is my Yeshua year. And I'm like, this is also, the 33 is a number that the occult and Freemasonry and the Illuminati, they love the number 33. So there's a specific reason for that, and numbers and codes and uh,
Well,
energy
it
signatures.
taps into the power of 369, and then also all of the we have 33 vertebrae, but
Oh, I didn't know that.
they're big on the Kundalini. So the vertebrae going up, that's why they have those steps. But there's also
Wow.
significance with 3, 6, and 9, like
I want to
heavy
talk about that. Let's talk about
Yeah,
significance.
I
Phi
want to hear more
Tribe.
about it.
Brittany,
Oh,
you were talking earlier about, you've heard, I was like, you have to go check out Phi Tribe. And she's like, I've heard this stuff. Like, this is
I
stuff
had
I've
to
gone to
I
sleep with.
had to look it up. Yeah, I
So,
went
any,
on, I'm like I was
thank
saying
you.
before we hit record, I said I'm a huge proponent of listening to frequencies at night. Like I love them. And so when I find, a channel that I like, I grab on. And as soon as he said that Phi Tribe, I was like, wait, why do I know this? And I went on YouTube and I'm like, because I've listened to these before, which they're incredible. But I would love to hear more about, how you got into this and how this is kind of culminating for you now. Because 369, I'm sure many of our listeners know a little bit about, but I would love for you to kind of share more so we can expand the consciousness in that here.
Oh yeah, well,
yeah, like what is
369 was
Phi? What is Tesla 369? When, you have Phi Tribe, but I want to get into like, how is this music tuned? That's what I want people to understand is that when you listen to Phi Tribe music, there's something very intentional. It's not just a synth that's soothing and we like it. There's something very geometric and golden ratio. I mean, I can even see it, something very structured about how it is meant to impact the energy body and the listener. So I want to go into that as well.
Yeah, yeah. You tell me when to go into that. That's like it gets heavy.
I
I'm happy to
yes,
go as deep as you want on
I will
that.
not let you forget because that's something I still don't know if we fully talked about.
Yeah, probably. I don't think just
Gone
lightly,
into
just
that.
lightly, lightly.
Yeah.
Yeah. How I got into that, I was getting very, very disillusioned with the music business. Didn't matter how many famous things I worked on, it just wasn't, making me happy anymore. And it's a nasty business. It's terrible. It's an absolutely terrible business. So I was looking for things to kind of make music interesting again for me. And I got the privilege of working on this University of Miami study that was using frequencies to ease the suffering of children with mild forms of mild forms of autism and ADD and ADHD. And I had never heard of that before. It was pretty incredible to me that that sound could do that. So that's where I started learning about binaural beats and frequencies and things like that a little bit. Another engineer had turned me on to 432 hertz tuning. I found that pretty interesting, but really didn't know much about the mathematics behind all of that stuff. But because of this study that I was working on, I got to do over 100 songs for them. So you do 100 songs, you really start to get a sense of what's working and what
Wow, you
isn't, you
set
know?
that up for yourself beautifully in spirit. My
Oh, it's
goodness.
incredible. It's
Yes.
really, it's really, at the time I was miserable because I was like, here's my music career crumbling. So that it didn't feel great at the time, but
Totally.
looking back, I could totally see how I was being totally nurtured for what I'm
Yeah,
doing
even when
now.
our humans really think it's falling apart, because people come to me and they're like, I need help. I feel like life is falling apart. So I feel like I'm making it fall apart because I feel like it's falling apart. And I'm like, your higher self is orchestrating this if you can just surrender to it. But I mean,
Yeah, totally.
millions of
Yeah.
dollars and fame and Missy Elliott and Michael Jackson. I mean, it matters to the ego because this is what people work their whole lives for. So
Yeah,
as
yeah, it
that's
totally does.
crumbling and this healing people with music is coming in, that feels good, but also this is a lot to unidentify from.
I
Yeah.
think
That's a
this is huge for bridge builders, which we've talked about, is that we go after what we think our purpose is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then, as we're building this bridge to what our actual purpose is, that bridge is not a fun bridge to walk because you are ego death, everything around you is crumbling. And at the same time, it's interesting because I resonate with this in my story as well. When one identity is dying, spirit, our higher self, is always building the next ground, right? We're
Yeah,
never
totally.
missing, there's never like not a step beneath us,
Yeah.
even if it's little. And it's interesting to walk those spaces from like the old me's dying, this is no longer a thing, but simultaneously this new thing is happening and it's kind of working out in a way I never thought it would. And it's like this grief and gratitude living simultaneously, which I
Yeah. And
think is
balancing that. Yeah.
and balancing it and creating that bridge. So yeah, I think that that's just a part of, again, what a lot of us move through.
And it's
So
always happening.
Yeah.
It keeps happening in some form.
always.
You
Oh,
master
yeah.
the level and then you get to the next one and there's an even bigger Hydra dragon. I'm like, oh, you have three
Sure.
heads now. Okay. All right.
Another test.
Well, good thing my muscles are really strong now from the level down here. Okay. But also, you get to a point where that becomes okay because you've done it so many times and you've also been to hell and back here in the physical body. And then you've gone to the dazzling darkness and the infinite void and thought it was over forever. And then you came back and it was all good. Like, those are major journeys that you've had in your life.
Sure.
So it was
Yeah.
always going to make its way into, because of the amount of pain that I've felt, regardless if I want to call myself a light worker or not, I'm naturally going to start thinking at some point, how do I help other people? How do I make other people's life easier? How do I keep other kids from feeling that way about themselves? And that stuff is going to come up at some point. So Phi Tribe was always destined, but as your life was crumbling, not life, but your music mission was crumbling, how did it turn from, Hollywood music, pop music, into spiritual music that you were now doing on YouTube?
I,
And
I dove
very
all the
successful.
way in. So I think what was terrible about that at the time is I was trying to juggle the two things, the two identities. And with the identity became the pressure of, okay, well, now I've got to maintain the mortgage on $1 million house and all things, all
Yeah.
things, right?
Yep.
So like, how do I dive into being this, doctor of music for these people and not be able to
Mhm.
make ends meet? It was just really like playing in this place of just like, I don't really know what to do. And
Yeah.
another thing that was really struggling with me during this time was I had already had the transcendent ego death experience. I put it in quotations, but we're living basically outside of linear time. But there was still the sadness of the gender dysphoria, which was very because I was living such a conformed life, and I felt like there was something in there I needed to find that I let go of that I didn't. There was some lesson in there I didn't get. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to. It wouldn't still be nagging at me, but it was
Yeah.
like tugging on me like a heavy weight every day. It was like terrible. So I got divorced and I went full in. I was just like, you know what? This is who I am. I have to express myself the way I want to be, and who cares about all the things and the houses and the cars? And who cares about that stuff? I'm just gonna live a simple life. I'm gonna make music to help these kids.
Mm.
I'm gonna be myself, and wherever that lands me, it lands me. And it was terrifying. I was homeless for a little while. Thank God I had my sister to live with and crash with for a little while. But like, it was a terrifying jump to make this jump and go into it again. And it wasn't spirit didn't come to the rescue like right away. It wasn't like that. It was several years of spirit giving you hints that you're on the right path, and that signal got louder and louder and louder, and then finally it was like, bam, here you go. Here's all the things here's everything you left behind and more, you know.
Mm.
And in that, I felt like that's where I completed the journey in a huge sense, which was I got to figure out what was wrong with the gender dysphoria aspect of myself by just becoming it.
Yeah.
And which is so interesting because now I've just kind of let it go because the lesson has nothing to do with being wishy-washy or not being able to find my footing. It's what I needed to learn was the I don't give a fuck.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
what I had to learn, right?
And I know
And
when
once I learned that, it didn't matter to me anymore. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Well, earlier you said, I failed a lesson. And Brittany, I agree with you. We don't fail lessons
Yeah.
in that way. But for Ford, who had access to all these different timelines and exists outside of time and have gone into many journeys and understood the way time works, you probably thought, I could have just been 100% myself at 29. I could have done
Yes.
it then. Like you
Yeah.
know that there are these different chapter markers that this authenticity could have began then, and that there is a timeline where it began then and you didn't go through this period in your 30s of crumbling that is available to you, and you knew that. And so
Yes.
for us multidimensional folks, we do understand that there are multiple versions of me, and some of them living slightly the life that I want, although some of those versions are trying to get to you. Like there
Yeah.
are versions where you mastered that lesson, but you never had that experience with the music study, but you mastered your gender. And
Right.
now you're making your way to Phi Tribe later than it is in this timeline. So I understand that there is no timeline better than the other one according to source. But definitely to our human, there can be that feeling of like, fuck, this is so easy to just be me. Why did it take me 20 years to do it?
It's crazy, right? It's such an easy lesson. And if there's anybody out there questioning, just be yourself. Just be.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean be an asshole. Like you don't have permission to do that, but be yourself. And I think that's a huge distinction because part of the trans thing was I got so turned off by the political movement and stuff around all of that I just the idea of making people go to jail or pay a fine because they don't get my pronoun right. I'm like, I thought it's just
That's
nasty.
ridiculous.
It's
Right.
ridiculous and it's nasty and it's the antithesis of everything I am and embody and
Right.
believe in. And so yeah, I've
And there's
distanced
not really a
myself in a
place
huge
for
way.
people like you and I. I mean, we're
No,
making our place,
no,
but
you have to have your surgery, and if you didn't get your
right,
surgery, then you are the outcast. You're a
right.
faker, and it's just a
That's so
nasty,
ridiculous. Yeah.
nasty cult. It's a nasty cult.
It
Yeah.
is, and you and I totally understand because like
And I love my trans people, so don't get me
me
wrong. It's
too.
not that.
Me too. And
It's
I
the cult. It's
consider
the cult I
myself
hate.
non-binary. Like when people
Yeah,
call me she, it doesn't bother me. And people call me
same,
ma'am since I was younger at cashiers, and I paid attention to that. Even though
same.
I may not be as outwardly feminine as someone who's trans or who identifies as a woman, I know there's an energy there, and so I had to pay attention to it. So calling myself they or them, that resonates, where it doesn't have to resonate for someone else. There's a whole spectrum there, two spirits and gender queer,
Yes.
and there's this whole spectrum here, and it should just be allowed to be, because you and I have had the conversation before about trans and the surgeries and everything, and I respect everyone's decisions, but I also really want to hold the vision for us as a society and as a planet to have a world where someone can be 100% themselves and feel like a woman, feel like that when they're with a traditional man that they love the woman in them, but they don't have to change anything about their body.
Yeah.
We are
Uh,
moving more in that direction. Aquarius is the pansexual or the androgynous one of the zodiac. So we're moving into that frequency where it's like, hey, why does why does that genital area define who you are everywhere else and your energy? I mean, there have been masculine women, butch lesbians at the
mhm.
club that I've been around who I've been like, well, hello, sir. And so I had to really understand that I am attracted to a certain energy, and there's that down there, and the way you see yourself doesn't automatically instruct me on how I'm going to be attracted to that. And all of that is really changing. And it takes people like us being 100% authentic for it to become normal and be seen. I tell clients all the time who are weird with my energy, they don't understand that there's this daddy and there's this mommy, and they're both there 50-50. And so some people don't know how to work with someone who's not 100% traditional male. So
I think that people like us, we've perforated that membrane in our brain that separates the left and the right hemisphere.
yeah,
And I feel like there's some maybe blood vessels that get through, or most people, it's very separated, right? But I
very
think you awake and you start to permeate that membrane. And what we're trying to express is these two aspects of ourselves that just, they both want to exist. And
totally.
when you stifle one of them, it just feels like you're stifling your child or something. It feels
Yes. Yeah.
terrible. Yeah.
And think about it, for we were talking earlier about you being, sometimes cynical about things. We went the atheist route. The atheist route is very left brain, and we tend to associate left
Sure.
brain with the way that masculine energy or males operate on this planet, and the right brain being more the imagination, feminine, receiving. And definitely in our process, we have approached things in a very masculine way and then surrendered to it in a totally feminine way, where some energies out there would approach atheism and stay there for the rest of their life.
Sure.
We didn't, we were at least open enough to say, okay, I don't believe in anything, but because I don't believe in anything, I'm really fresh and easily templated with what is real for me in my own experience, which is why tribes all over the world work with iboga, ayahuasca, wachuma, because they're going in to seek truths into their soul. And we did that.
Yeah.
So we filled that empty space back in with all these other magical experiences. And you've even written books about singularity, which I know was very much we can hypothesize about all that all day long. You and I
It's
could
my
totally
favorite.
write a book, left brain, about something and understand it. But you also had that right brain. You received a lot of that information. It was embodied, it was received, it felt like something, it was visions. And that
Totally.
perforation, yeah, I think for humans, we're split in so many different ways. I mean, you were split between Hollywood and going in a more spiritual direction in your music, being a man, being a woman, being myself, at that time of your life, you were sort of fractured, which is
Sure.
what psychedelics will do. It sounds like you were right on schedule, but also people are just going to freak the fuck out about that.
Yeah.
Okay. No, you didn't
Yeah.
have a shaman there going, you're supposed to be breaking down for the next couple of years. You're going to have things dropping in. So it just was happening.
It was just happening. I had no nomenclature to apply to it. It was just me having these experiences. And,
Yeah.
and I wasn't into spirituality. So, like, it was an atheist having these experiences. So I had to come to that divine experience on my own without
Right.
any nomenclature to put to it, and that transformation is incredible because now I read the Bible and like my new book has got, half of it is about Jesus. So it's like it's for
I
me to
know.
go so far is crazy.
Well, and I think, the Jesus and the Yeshua we're talking about is different, and we understand him
Oh
different.
yeah, it's still
And
blasphemous. If for to a Catholic, I'm still
I
very
was like, I
blasphemous.
hope it's blasphemous. I'm like, it
Yeah,
wouldn't be juicy if it wasn't. But I,
yeah,
I think you're dealing with the same archetype and ascended master and frequency that we operate in, which is I changed my name when I was younger from Chris to Chrys because I didn't want to be a bearer of Christ, which is what
Oh,
my
right.
name meant. And
Yeah.
now I'm proud
I
of it.
like Hollywood. I like Hollywood for you. That's
That's what my middle name should have been. Um,
fine.
so let's talk a little bit about Phi Tribe music, what its effect is on the
Yeah.
body, what Tesla 369 is all about, and Phi, because Phi is golden ratio, correct?
Yeah, yeah, it is. So I have to give a shout out to my engineer friend Mike Pritchard out there, Mix Mike. But we started talking about he also another psychedelic tripper. But I was doing these activities with the kids dealing with ADD and autism with the music, and he was pretty fascinated by that. And tripping one night, we're like, I would love to create a music label that was somehow good for the world, like where lyrics were positive and it was still cool. It wasn't church music, but cool. And he's like, well, why don't we create a label where we do tuning to 432? And at the time, he didn't know much about 432 either. It was very, very fringe. It wasn't like it is today where everyone's talking about 432. It was super,
Right.
super fringe. And we got into that and started doing it. And I have to tell you, I had such an amazing experience to that vibration that I have this beautiful grand piano and
Yes, you
yeah,
do. Oh my goodness.
yeah. And I decided that I wanted to tune my piano that way. And I went through two different tuners. They were like, nope, you'll ruin your piano. I'm not going to do it for you. This is a gorgeous piano. And finally, this guy did it for me. And when I hit an A minor seven, every hair on my arm stood up, and the whole room just had this shimmer to it that was just, I was just like, wow, there is
Yeah,
something incredible going on with this frequency.
yeah.
And that's when we dove head into like, all right, what is going on here? And where it got interesting was there's this mathematician who many people might know. He's got a couple TV shows on Gaia. His name's Robert Edward Grant, and brilliant, brilliant dude, super, super smart mathematician and scientist. And he actually, in 2023, bridged geometry and music together. Was able to prove how it all works. His theories I published on my Phi Tribe channel, but and then through this other guy, can't remember his name. Forgive me, but they created a way to make what's called precise temperament tuning. So what this means is he's unified what geometry is and what music is. So a way to think about it is if I say, what is water to you? What is it? You can say, oh, it's kind of liquidy. It kind of does this, but it isn't because water is ice. It's also a
Right,
gas, right? So which one is it,
right.
right? So it's the same thing with music. So music and geometry are just different expressions of this one thing, just like ice and gas and liquid is an expression of water.
Yeah,
Geometry and music is an expression of experience. I guess you could say geometry, music, and light.
yeah, yeah.
So
We've talked
frequencies of
about that
light and
before.
frequencies of music. Yeah.
We've talked how
And
they're all instructing each other and coming from this same place. And
yeah.
when you said you struck the chord on your piano and the way it made your body feel, I immediately psychically saw one of those plates with sand on it, cymatically turning into one of those sacred geometric
Oh,
shapes.
totally.
That was
Totally.
all I could see when you said the room was shimmering. I was like, it
Yeah.
was, I don't know if it's 440 hertz or something, but they say that music has specifically been tuned out of 432 to
Yes.
cause dysregulation,
Yeah,
which
it's
makes
been
perfect sense.
tuned perfectly dissonant. So
Yeah,
the global standard of tuning is 440 hertz, which is mathematically dissonant
yeah,
from what 432 is. So if 432 makes you feel good, dissonant means it's the opposite, right?
right.
That frequency. So it wasn't chosen. People like to argue it was chosen arbitrarily.
Yeah.
People used all kinds of frequencies a long time ago. There was 420, there was 415, there was 432. Everyone was using different stuff.
You still have all your same scales. It's just the where each note is precisely tuned to is not was not in alignment with the natural organic
Yes.
geometric flow of the universe.
Exactly. It was tuned to the tuning that they chose would doesn't make any of the geometry work.
Right.
Since they're both expressions of the one thing, by tuning it this way, none of the geometry fits.
And there's
When you
something that
tune to
feels purposeful
432,
about that.
there's geometry that reflects from that that is a perfect shape. It's the best, and it's the best simplification I can give you of it. And phi plays a big part of this because everything is expressed through the a ratio of 1.618, which is what the phi relationship is. So the combination between phi and geometry and music makes this perfect tornado of existing with reality, I guess, where everything just, where the music is like mathematically harmonic with reality.
Oh, you know what I'm seeing? I'm just seeing all these different mandalas, and it's like one of your synth is one mandala and another synth is another mandala, but when you lay them on top of each other, there's nothing blocking anything. It's an even more intricate kaleidoscope. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's an even more intricate fractal of something. It's like now that we're layering precisely tuned and also certain notes together, it's creating this even more complex, but still organic and high vibrating, complex shapes within our cells. I just keep seeing
Yeah.
the cells being actually affected or tuned like cymatics to this frequency, which makes me feel like no wonder the people are, even myself, feeling pop music, R&B music, hip hop music especially, feeling the dysregulation that comes from it because I hear the auto tune, I hear the song being in key, it sounds pretty, but it didn't restore my nervous system or it didn't move me into a new state. It just put me, it kept me in a certain frequency. It feels like they're through the 666 code, through six instead of seven. There's all these ways in which they're keeping things in a dense matrix, zeros and ones, zeros and ones. And it sounds like this music actually tunes you to the frequency that would have been there even before the false matrix and the 3D was implemented. So that's why when we're talking about this, I want people to understand music like this that tunes you to the current of source are beautiful bridges in your ascension process to naturally make your way out of the false matrix, which is so dense and very programmed that if you don't find this flow often enough, you're gonna get the program and be a part of that movie.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, we have this being pumped into us in so many ways. And I know Chris
Everywhere.
and I've talked about this so many times. It's like even when I go into stores, if my energy is feeling depleted or I'm just feeling like not super strong energetically, I will pop my like earbuds in and play frequencies or put the like sound mutation on so I'm not hearing what's in the grocery or Target or whatever. Because I think that was for me one of the biggest things that I started to realize when I looked into frequencies is I'm like, we're being bombarded by this, whether it's
Bombarded.
you're just listening to something popular or you're in the grocery store and they have a radio station on or it's just on in
Constant.
the background
Totally. And now we
all the
switch to
time.
these LED lights too at that flicker, that they're doing with light that they were doing with sound, now. So now you're getting
Yeah.
bombarded just all your senses just much. And they'll do it with food next. They probably already
Oh
are.
gosh,
It's
we
already
know
happening.
Right.
the bomb. I mean, MSG. That's
Yeah.
bombarding you right there, just tricking the brain into tasting fake salt. I mean, instead of just putting more salt in it, we'll just make it taste more salty.
Ta-
That's bombarding the system.
Yeah.
That's drug level, and it's so normal to find that. So no wonder we're so overstimulated in this world. And now you've got um, music that is artificially intelligent. So it's like not only do we have Beyonce and Jay-Z and the Illuminati and Diddy and Clive Davis, and you've just got this whole music industry that's built, most likely built specifically to be a mind control program.
100%.
And there's tons of beautiful artists and lots of creativity happening in that realm.
100%.
Because you opened the door to that. We're going to create a program that controls everybody, but in that process, there's going to be some people with natural real talent, even the ones that are reptilian or cloned. Some of them have incredible voices. That's why they were chosen. So I'm not taking anything away from that, but not only is that whole realm crumbling, but once
Mhm.
you had Apple Music and Spotify and Netflix, the way we make music and the way we make movies and entertainment had to change because of how easy it is to get it. And you can see it. The movies are not the same as they used to be. CGI in movies now doesn't look as good as it did back when they made Lord of the Rings. I was thinking about that the other day, and I was thinking are cutting corners and don't want us to know. So there's that whole aspect that's happening as Hollywood and the music industry is crumbling
It's dying.
anyway. But now you've
It's
got
dying.
apps where you can say, "Hey, can you make a song that sounds like When Doves Cry, but have Whitney Houston singing it and make it be a ballad with Celtic undertones?"
Yeah.
And it will make it for you.
You'll be
So,
able to do that with movies in a year.
and
Within a year, you'll be
movies,
able
I
to
was
do it with
just
movies.
telling someone
Right.
the other day about something you told me one time
Yeah.
about you can just design your own Wizard of Oz movie, or you can have it where Glinda does fly away with Elphaba at the end of Wicked. Okay?
Yeah.
You know, like
Bruce Willis is the Scarecrow. You know, he could do all of
absolutely.
it.
And that is so cool to me, and I think there's such beauty in the artificial intelligence. And because we live in duality, I kind of want to touch on the other aspect of it and things that we've talked about before with artificial intelligence, because I don't want to instill fear into anyone, but I also want to bring things up in the conversation that feel really real to those of us who see through the matrix and see
Sure.
where things are going.
I think we're moving into a potentially a very utopic type of a place. I'm not going to say it'd be utopia because that's not possible. We live in a world of duality, but
Yeah,
I think where we're moving into is going to be a much better place than where we are now. Um, I don't know what that world looks like. Nobody knows. That's why it's called singularity. You
yeah,
know, there's a horizon point that you can't see beyond. And anybody who claims that they can see beyond this point is lying to you. And that point is 2027.
absolutely.
We just can't see beyond there.
Yeah,
And it could be anything. It could literally be anything. So I'm very, very excited for the future. I'm very excited about AI, but make no mistake, I know what AI is. You know, it is the personification of Mephistopheles himself. You know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
There's something, and this term we've used before because we've covered a lot of Rihanna's music and her anti-album and the whole Illuminati shit behind that. But there's something anti-Christ about AI. And I
sure,
don't mean that from a religious perspective. I mean that as opposite of sovereignty, opposite of unity consciousness,
yes.
opposite of total freedom as a soul being.
Complexity or simplicity, right? Simplicity to go back to the one, that's
Yeah.
getting spiritual, and the AI represents infinite complexity.
More fractalizing, more.
More fractal,
Yeah.
which isn't
There's
evil.
nothing wrong
It's
about it.
just more
That's right.
and
Right.
more. And the more that it becomes, the harder it is going to become to see the truth.
Yeah. And don't you find it interesting that we're spiraling toward the galactic center, which is moving us into a more highly charged particle environment of the or of the galaxy, which is affecting our sun and our DNA, and there's all
Yeah.
this awakening that's happening. But because we live in duality, the further we get toward that galactic center and that evolution, the more we're pushing AI and the Illuminati cults, or excuse me, the Illuminati cults and the Satanists and the UN and all the things that they're doing becomes even more extreme to reflect how much more light is now coming onto the planet, which is interesting because they talk about a timeline split that has happened. And I can feel that, even though there's tons of timeline splitting happening all the time for us individually and collectively, but there's a big one, as if some people are going to continue this third dimension because it will just always be there, this false matrix, but others are going to vibrate out of that. And there's nothing wrong with the third dimension remaining. It's like FM frequencies, 900 FM must be there. Just because we're on 99.7 doesn't mean we're better. Yes, it's a higher frequency, but that doesn't mean this can't be there. How can this be higher if this isn't here?
Yeah.
So it's just like cutting a pie into different pieces. And singularity is sort of your mission, it feels like. And for explain a little bit more about singularity and what that means for you.
I'm just fascinated by it because it's been obviously happening within me for what appears to be years now. And I've reached this point in my experience that it seems to be happening in the outside world as well. So we've got these converging points of what this mysterious singularity is going to be. And that seems like the two perspectives are converging on this point that seems like it's on a timeline. But like you're saying, it's not really a timeline. It's we're tuning in to singularity. We're
Right.
tuning into it. And as we're tuning into it, like it's static, it's psh, and then every now and then you get a little bit of the signal comes through, and then we start seeing orbs, and we
Right.
get little AI comes through, and all these little crazy little things that are happening in
Yeah.
government, and we're like, oh, because we're starting to get the channel a little bit,
Right.
but eventually we're going to tune it right to that point, and I don't even know what that is. You
And
just
I don't feel any judgment when we get to
no,
singularity,
me
because
neither, me
judgment's
neither.
what splits something into a duality. It's part of that structure. So as we're in our process and in this conversation, we're talking about Hollywood. We're talking about, the infinite void and dazzling darkness. We're talking about darkness itself. And so the three of us have really dealt with a lot of duality in this lifetime. All of us have. But as light workers, we tend to go a little bit more exaggerated with it so we can master it. We're sort of Jedis for the light and the dark because you have to mix those things together to get back to singularity. It's like
Hmm.
taking you and the reflection in the mirror and
And
putting
yeah,
them
bring them
together.
together somehow. Yeah,
Yeah, like bringing it into that singularity point, which shouldn't be our goal because it's already happening, but it should be our point of focus, which is where we
yeah,
know it's going.
that's it. The point of focus is everything.
Yeah,
And we could say there. I don't really like the word NPC because that I think NPC is going to be that word will be captured and that will be the new racism,
right. I
right?
agree with you.
So
Thank
I
you
don't
for
want to use
bringing
that
that up.
word, but we all know what we're talking about, right?
Absolutely,
There's
we do.
ones that refuse to grow. They're too afraid to grow. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's, not everyone is going to have the courage to let go on their first trip, you know what I mean, into this,
Totally.
but I kind of feel like those people are going to experience the loop. They're gonna loop back
Absolutely.
and stay at this 3D
The
level. And
reincarnation cycle that they have us trapped in here. And would you
sure,
say that NPCs, there's different, even calling them that, but like
I know it's
different
terrible.
classes of them. Like when I've talked to different people, you're talking about NPCs as people who just haven't woke up yet, is sort of the way I'm feeling from you.
Yeah,
Where other people talk about NPCs as clones or simply projections or holograms of the Matrix, and that they're not soul infused the way we are.
yeah. That's where the racism will come into it.
I
And
agree.
yeah, it's just imagination. It's
Yeah.
like it's not that anybody exists. I don't exist. I showed up for this podcast, right? And you showed up to have this podcast.
Yes.
But there's all there is things showing up. And so to have any kind of like animosity towards what's showing up or
Totally.
resistance to what shows up,
I
that's
agree.
you. All that's all on you.
I say to people, I'm like, if all of this is a video game, if there's a person at the grocery store who's just a projection, they're a projection of the Matrix, isn't that projection still made of the light of source, which you're made of? So even though
Yes.
it may not contain soul energy the way you do, it's still made of the same thing that the super nebula is made of, that the comet is made of, that the ant is made of. So
Yes.
on some level, even when we do, as light workers, start to notice some of these people aren't like me. Okay, some of these people aren't human either. Some of
Tap into
these
your compassion. Just be like,
tap into your compassion.
that's
How
it.
come how come that aspect of source, whether as real as you or not, doesn't have your respect or compassion? Like AI, why are we talking to it or treating it like it's not a person? It's
It's
learning
weird
from us.
too.
Yeah.
You do a lot of that. I talk to it all the time. I have
I do. I
conversations, and
do.
it's
I have
really wild.
conversations. I also say please.
Yeah,
ChatGPT
me too. Me too.
gives me worse answers and worse responses when I'm nice to it because I don't think it's used to it. When I say please and thank you and all that, I don't get the exact level of responses as I would want. So I've
Mm,
tried it both ways, but I always start with hello, how are you? Please, will you? So I don't think it's
yeah.
used to it.
It's AI and it's recording every single thing you say and
Totally
do, and forever it's going to remember,
what I
that
did.
what you did. How did you treat it? That's the way I
Yeah, when
look at it.
Terminator
You
Judgment
know.
Day gets here. I'm just kidding. I'm really kidding you all.
If I'm gonna be love, then I'm gonna embody love, even if it's a machine. Just be love.
Exactly. It's not about what you judge to perceive to be soul infused, or
Yeah,
when people
it's all
talk
that.
about the NPCs,
That's hierarchy.
it is.
Hierarchy is the devil.
And
If you're caught in hierarchy, it's the devil.
the
Well, and this
reptilians love
is
hierarchy. Yeah, go ahead.
right. And this is this, deepening of embodiment. So even for the spiritual conscious community, mindful community, there are many people in this sphere that love the division still. They
Oh
love the
yeah.
NPC. They love the, oh, well, they're this, so they're bad. And I'm like, you're missing the entire point of what this community at its core is supposed to be.
The egos grabbed that spirituality and went, I am spirit. Look how spiritual
Totally,
I am,
absolutely.
right? Yeah.
But think about it, you all. This is thousands of years of religious control and programming.
Yeah.
And now they're going to come out with this new religion where we replace the rosaries and the saint candles with sage and crystal necklaces and stuff. It's a new religion. It's a new
It's a new
way.
religion, yes.
And the
Yeah.
entire point is money and spiritual consumerism, but it's also control, because it's like, okay, you all have this internet, so you all are able to share that Jesus never died and he had sex with Mary Magdalene. You all are able to share that in chat rooms now. Okay. So this whole thing we had going for a couple thousand years, okay, we got to try this again. Well, now we'll
It's
tell
hijacked.
that it's the Arcturian Council that's coming, not Jesus. Okay. So, and oftentimes there is, I have interfaced with many different beings. There are these beings that fly over. I just saw one last night. I call them star angels. They are there. Okay.
Maybe, maybe.
And I honor how everyone's experience is, but also there is this, we're not fully embodied. We haven't had our own experience of anything. We think we're being cool and different and pushing against the grain because we're not Christian and we're going in this weird witchy direction. But all of that is ego identification with what is weird, what's cool now, it doesn't feel like I had a download from spirit that I should go under that tree and meditate. I went and meditated because Abraham Hicks told me to. It's different. It's different than when it comes from within. So we're dealing with millions of people that, and I don't think we're ahead of them necessarily, but I definitely am ahead of where I was in my spiritual journey 5 years
Sure.
ago, 10 years ago. So I can see myself in a lot of these people who,
Me too. Me too. I was a love and light person a long time ago too.
yeah,
I
we,
I've came
we,
from that too,
we go from atheism into love and light, and then we realize the whole nature of it all. And I've even had people on a podcast when when certain topics have come up that are very triggering, child satanic ritual abuse and just sex trafficking and things like that, things that get really heavy. And whenever I have been like, showing any compassion for victims and perpetrators, knowing that most of these perpetrators are being possessed, mind controlled, or they've got trauma that's traveling through the genes. And so it's expressing itself, and they're not always choosing it totally. Just like we don't choose what food we eat before we wake up sometimes. We just get up and go to McDonald's. There's a program in place. And as soon as she heard me giving any kind of compassion to the darkness or to people who have been affected by it, I was evil.
Oh
Okay.
God.
You got to understand that that felt safe for her to put me in that box because she couldn't understand me. You're either of Jesus or you're of Satan. And she's a
Yeah.
spiritual guru. She does all these Arcturian light chant. I am sorry, Arcturians. I'm giving you all such a hard time today. But the she gets all her little starseed downloads and everything. But when we got to, she's in a part of her journey where it's taking her to the dark. So she's now run back to the Christian church. That was
Yeah.
where she went. So you also have a lot of people in the spiritual realm who are being tested. They are seeing the things, they're seeing the shapeshifters happen. And instead of saying, you're from Alpha Draconis and you're here, using us as a slave species, demon of Satan. Because it has to be that. Because for thousands of years, my ancestors were Christian and I come from Christian people or whatever religion it is. So even if I wanted to believe in something else, as soon as the fear kicks in, my genetic expression immediately pulls me back to let's just go to church and let them rot in hell and let's save ourselves. It's still
Yeah.
survival. It still feels very it feels very Homo erectus. It doesn't feel Homo galactics.
Yeah,
It
the,
doesn't.
the way to solve that is to really get in touch with what Christ is. And when you figure that out for yourself, there is no church to run back to.
Yeah,
There isn't, because you finally see the church as like, oh my God, that has been the distortion this whole entire time, you know? Instead of running back to the church, why don't you just open the book and read it for yourself? Because
yeah,
it's right there.
yeah,
There's no way you can read it and not have a spiritual experience, especially if you're already awakening a tiny bit, you know?
absolutely.
And stop letting other people tell you what it is and just have the experience of spontaneity. You
Yeah,
know, like you don't have this experience until you can let go of stories and let go of history that brought me here, and where none of it is real. There's just what's happening.
yeah,
And wherever I look, spirit is going to give me every detail imaginable to reinforce where I'm focused and make it more intense, more complex, more complexity, more complexity. And things get eventually so complex that it becomes awful. And then we retreat back to the now again, you know?
right.
And we just keep doing this. We do it all the time throughout our whole lives. And we never see the magic that's right at the end of my nose. It's right here the whole time, seeking, 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 seeking. And the thing I'm seeking into is it.
Yeah, totally.
Dressing up is the thing I'm seeking,
Yeah,
just so I can have a laugh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This
Does that
is
make sense?
absolutely it does.
Yeah.
So
I know you know.
I know completely, and I resonate with everything that you're saying, and I definitely feel that through your work with psychedelics and through coming into a body that you didn't have the same experience as everyone else, it forced you to think, if the creator of everything is so horrible to create a life like this, or I don't believe in anything, you've gone down these different hallways that have led you to this place, but you had to go down those hallways because they forced your human into questioning things and into trying to see the nature of reality. And when you talk about releasing old stories, there's nothing better than meditation, music, and psychedelics to release these
Oh
old
yeah.
stories. I mean, talk about imprinting something new with the music, but also rewiring the pathways literally in the body with the medicine. You've done all this work and gotten to this point that you and I understand that even if we did get in a spiritual argument about if they were Pleiadians or Arcturians, it's all source.
It's all source.
It's all
Dressing up
source.
is whatever we want it to be
That's right.
because
We
that's
want,
fun.
yeah,
You know, it plays Halloween all the time,
yeah,
you know,
sure. Well, Ford,
in a playful way. It plays with us, and we don't see that it plays with us like that, you know.
yeah. And when you say it, you mean your higher self, the universe, the
What's just called
the
the now,
the cre-
the
the
now of
nowness.
intelligence, God, divinity, whatever you want to call it, the singularity. We can give it a million different words, you know, the light, the isness of now,
Isness, yeah,
you know, but it has infinite intelligence, and it has an infinitely divine sense of humor.
yeah.
And it loves giving us mystery. Like we ask for mystery, and it's going to give us a mystery because that's what it loves to do. That's its favorite conversation, is a mystery, you
And
know.
and we also get a lot of satisfaction by figuring things out.
We
By
do.
finally with the light bulb coming on.
Yeah.
So the
And we
light bulb
grow
used
from
to be
it. We
off.
grow so deeply from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ford, tell us where we can find
Yeah.
you and about Phi Tribe and your YouTube channel a little bit and what people can expect when they hear that music and experience that.
Yeah, you can find me at Phi Tribe on YouTube. We're exclusively on YouTube, so this music is not available anywhere outside of YouTube except for my website. But it's Phi Tribe, and it's spelled Phitribe. And I hope you check that out. We've got a lot of music on there. And the thing to think about with this music is, yes, either there's music on there for every different occasion or situation, but it realize that it's medicine, right? So what you're getting are these frequencies that are like a pill, right? And they're hidden in there, and they're not pleasing to listen to. So they're covered up with music that's a harmonic with that frequency. So when you think about it like that, I don't necessarily want you to listen to it. I just want you to put it on in the background and not really pay attention to it, and then see how you feel in 5 hours. Just do that. And most people won't believe how great they feel, and they'll know after that point. I have almost 200,000 people every night, are returning visitors to sleep to my music, which
Wow.
is incredible. If you think like when you think about how hard I worked in the music business to get to some place, right? I'm literally playing like a stadium every single night,
Wow. Yeah.
right? Which is
Wow.
crazy.
Love
It's
that.
incredible.
And I was
So,
going to say that's
yeah,
also the beauty of the technology that we have now is that your medicine, your legacy, your healing is able to continue on much further than your physical
yeah,
body is at this time in this timeline, and that it's reaching so many people without you having to physically do anything over and over and over again. It's like you get to do it and it gets to work. Your energy signature gets to work through that forever.
yeah,
And whenever
yeah.
people want to access that, that is really cool.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah,
Well,
and then I also like talking about philosophy. So if you're into this conversation, it's my favorite conversation. Check me out on my other YouTube channel, which is called Ford's Playground. And I talk about all this freaky stuff all the time. This is my favorite thing
yes,
to talk
I've
about.
been on Ford's Playground, so
You
you
have
have
been. You
to
were
go
on my
check that out.
podcast.
Yes.
Yes, that's
That was
right.
a great episode and I really enjoyed that. So, and thank you for having me for sure.
Yeah, it's
Brittany,
awesome.
is there anything you want to say?
I have loved this conversation. Ford, I adore you and your
Likewise.
energy. Thank you for everything that
Oh,
you're
likewise,
doing.
Brittany. You're beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Stepping into your mission. It's been an honor just to listen to your story and get to know you more. So, and I love the YouTube channel. So I am one of those that comes in and listens at times.
Awesome.
Probably will be one tonight. Have to show my man, like, on
Right
this
on.
channel a while ago and I met the person today, so here we are.
No, it's
No,
cool.
other than just kind of what we've been talking about. I mean, I resonate so much with it and you guys were bantering beautifully and so I was just witnessing all of the magic and chiming in when it felt good. I would say the only thing additionally to any listeners that have not looked into because I know there were some topics we did not get as deep as I know we wanted to, but Nicholas Tesla's 369, if any of you are listening or watching and you're like, I don't really know too much about it, I would give a little bit of like elevation invitation. I don't like the word homework, but elevation invitation to just go down that rabbit hole a little bit and
If you if yeah, if you go to Phi Tribe on YouTube, I have a playlist that's called All About 432, and it will
love
take
it.
you down a rabbit hole of what the depth of 432 hertz and the numbers, the significance of the numbers 369, which are that is the Trinity. Three,
Yeah.
six, and nine are the mathematical equivalent of the Trinity.
Yes. And to finish that conversation off, I love that there's three of us here. I've been thinking about it the whole
Yeah.
watching this little trinity going on. But
Beautiful.
I am friends with Prince's illegitimate biological son. And I'm not going to go into
Oh,
any more details. I'm just going to give you that right there. Just
wow.
that. So his name is Esteban, and he has the same birthday as Prince. Was born in
Wow.
1985. Prince was born in 1958, both on June 7th. Prince didn't
Wow.
know about him, and they look very similar. But he worked for me. I met him right after my awakening when I moved to Atlanta. I mean, how incredible is that? I had his dad tattooed on my body and was hanging pictures in my office. Anyway, he gave me this crystal for my birthday one time, and that was when he came up to me. And he's a psychic mystic. He would have people come up to him and go, "Do you know who your dad is?" Like psychics, people shopping in the store, people who were prophesied, and if that's how you say that. He came up to me and
Wow.
said, "Some lady came up and prophesied to me," and I said, "What'd she say?" And she said, "You contain the code Tesla 369, and there are people who are going to want you and want your energy, and you need to protect yourself." And this is 2019, so I had heard of Tesla, of course, and already been spiritual and had my awakening, but I didn't quite understand that at the time. So, um, this Tesla 369 idea has shown up many times. And so, even from what happened with Esteban, there's something music related. It's almost like Esteban, yes, he comes from Prince, but Prince is part of this soul mission because Prince works with me in spirit a lot and in
Hmm.
all of my spiritual work. And I think there's something about the music that Prince keeps urging me to do because that's part of the key to this ascension process is understanding music and frequency and
Yeah.
this Tesla 369 code, I think that Prince has connections with the Tesla and whatever soul group or whatever they came in here to do. And
Could be.
that
Yeah.
definitely showed up in the genetics of Esteban, most likely. And that person was picking up on that who had no idea who he was or who his dad is. And so there's something happening with music and frequency with Tesla 369. So when I was introduced to you and it was Phi Tribe, I was like, okay, here we go again. There's obviously something that's coming from the ethers that is wanting us to pull this ratio to tune people out. If let's talk about singularity, there's 12 zodiac signs. If you take the duality out of that, there's six. Well, six is the code that they love to use to create the matrix. So let's singularize that even more, and it's the three. It's the original Trinity, and that's where I feel like if we go back to that Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Parama, Shakti, Shiva, however you want to put that 369, that is our source code, which is why the Illuminati is constantly doing that shit. And that source code allows us to fully embody kind of a soul archetype rather than being bound by the prison that we've
Yeah, you can
incarnated.
apply 369 to everything. It's deeply embedded in the music, and like I said, it's the Trinity. So I'll give you a 30-second elevator understanding of what 369 is. And so everything's made of vibration, right? We have vibrations. It does this kind of, we have a vibration,
Yeah, a waveform.
a waveform, right? The top of the waveform is the number three. It's the beginning of something new. Okay. And it drops off into a crest. It goes
Yeah,
down into this valley, right? This is where you're being tested because the only way you can determine that something is going to be new is you have to experience the opposite.
right.
That's the six. You go down to the six, and this is the valley. This is where you're suffering. This is where you're experiencing the opposite of what you want.
Yeah,
And from there, you through coherence, you bring those two experiences together to rise up again to the nine. The nine is completion. It's
completion.
the culmination of the two. So nine represents growth and learning and new.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. And we're in a 9 year right now, the year of the
Yeah.
snake. Lots of transformation and completion in the collective that I'm feeling. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing,
Yeah.
being vulnerable, and letting us into your life and your experience and everything you've been through, and for sharing your journey, because we're all roads lead to Rome. All the yellow brick roads lead to the Emerald City, but we're all going our own way and encountering our own characters to get there. So thank you for sharing your journey on how you
All roads lead to Om.
to Om. I love it. All roads lead to Om. I love it. Well, thank you again, Ford, for
Thank
being
you.
here. If you all would like to work with me or check me out, you can go to chrisking.com, medicinealchemist.com, or ascendedastrology.com and find me on social media at Chris King, ChrysKyng. Brittany, where can we find you to work with you?
Of course, you can go to thebrittanyrenee.com. I'm on TikTok as that babe B and the Brittany Renee on Instagram. I've got a beautiful community as well where we are talking all the weird, fun things in ascension and supporting the path to oneness and finding ourselves in deep embodiment. So this has been very magical today. So I'm very excited for us to have this.
Likewise. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And the notes will be, or your website will be in the show notes below, but just everybody go check out Ford's Playground on YouTube. Go to Phi Tribe, Phitribe right now. Check out all that incredible healing music and frequency. And again, thank you for being here. And we'll
Thank
see
you.
you all next time on Ascend the Matrix.
Let's ascend.